number 10, aka this is the finale of season number 2, man. Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Episode number 10 finally got to the end. Um, if you think you're seeing deja vu, you're not tripping. Same guest from episode number 5.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, 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 yeah.
my boy David B. Watkins the third. Glad to have him on with us, man. How you feeling, bro? How you feeling? How you feeling?
Man, well, glad to be in the building. Glad to be online with you all. And man, that intro that you had me bobbing my head. I was just getting ready to freestyle a little bit, or do some, what's that? Yeah, what's his name?
Lil John.
Lil John. Yeah, something like that. But I'm good, man.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Back 5 episodes ago, we dealt with a pretty heavy topic of church hurt. We kind of dove into it head first and got some good feedback. So much so that we it was requested that we do a part 2. So here we are.
Well, bless the Lord. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
good stuff. Good stuff. Uh, Pause for the cause. We do want to point out that this is happening in real time. So for those who may be viewing in person, we can catch your comments in real time. We'll pop them up on the screen here, and you'll be able to chime in and chop it up with us, like so. Cousin Carla, hello. Good to see you. Good to see you on with us tonight. So don't be afraid to pop in those comments, dialogue with us. Um, yeah, let's hop into it, bro. You
Let's
ready for
do
this?
it. Let's do it.
Cool, cool, cool. So let's pull up my stuff on the screen there. So in part 1, man, we discussed a pattern. We discussed a mass exodus that we're seeing of
Mhm.
individuals that are departing the local church.
Yeah.
A lot of it is due to this topic of church hurt, man. And so, with that mass exodus going on, how can we disrupt and kind of change this pattern?
Man, I don't profess to be an expert um, and know all the answers,
Mhm.
but I think it's a combination of things that disrupts this pattern.
Yeah.
First, I think that it starts with the church acknowledging how it has hurt folks in the past, acknowledging how we continue to hurt people through poor theology and poor humanology.
Mhm.
I think I think the church has to make a series of corrective steps
Yeah.
in order to be received, and for the apologies that we make oftentimes to be received. So I think that is the case. But also, I think that the church is in an interesting space because um, I read a Pew Research article a couple of weeks ago that would say that 56% or so of people in America believe that the church has lost its influence in the public square. And so we're not just battling who we hurt, but we are battling a culture um, who has been hurt, number one. And number two, we're battling a culture um, that 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 knows nothing about church, right? The children of a generation that doesn't know anything about church. And so with every generation, society becomes further removed from church. And so the conversation of church hurt is more probably expansive than we often talk about, because there is a degree of people that we've hurt, but the impact of who we have hurt has spanned generations behind those individuals. And so we've got to realign and reassess how we deal with people, and we've got to figure out how do we rebrand the church so that people feel like it's something they want to be a part of.
No, that's good. And it's for those who are old school. When you hear terms like brand, it's like, oh, you're talking about business, and church ain't a business. But there is a business apparatus when you
Sure.
talk about the church. And we'll talk later about just how do we meet the current needs of the generation.
Yeah.
Because in the days of the civil rights movement, man, the church was the epicenter
Yeah.
of. So if you talk about black churches, the epicenter of the black community. It was the meeting place. It was the hub, if you will, for the community.
Yeah.
And it seems like like you said, we are trying to find our way to get back to that. But not as good. It's we got to really explore some alternatives. We have to be transparent and realize, hey, in our methods of trying to hold up the bloodstained banner, we damaged some people.
Yeah. Yeah. We did. We damaged a lot of people. Um, and not all of what we said was wrong. Part of it was how we said it,
Our approach.
And another part of it was to whom we said it and in the space that we said it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I think we've certainly got some stuff to clean up.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So one thing you mentioned too, in this was in your closing remarks of part one, you were very careful to point out, hey, when you mention church hurt, normally it's because one individual hurt you, and it's not always the one individual. It's not always a representation of the entire body of people. Just because one person hurts you doesn't mean that the rest of the body necessarily feels that way. So when you look at that scenario, I'm the individual. Hey, someone hurt me. I've been hurt by an individual in the congregation. I've stepped away. I've been a part of that mass exodus. So what does forgiveness for the individual, what does that look like in this particular setting from your vantage point?
I think forgiveness looks like acknowledging that a person can't go back in time and change what they did to hurt you.
Right.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I think forgiveness looks like the fact that just because you are hurt doesn't mean that the hurt was intentional or even the offense is legitimately an offense.
Yeah.
So I think that's a challenge. I think that we all have to grapple with at some point whenever we've been hurt. Is the hurt might be legitimate and is legitimate, but is what they did a legitimate offense, right? So you could end up offended, but did they offend you?
Right.
From a biblical perspective, offense is the idea of causing somebody to stumble, right?
Yeah.
And largely it comes with an intentional motive behind it. So I think every person who has ever been in a place of feeling hurt and feeling offended has to take inventory of whether or not that's legitimate, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And then third of all, I think when there is an acknowledgement of that I hurt you and that I've done something wrong or whatever, when there's an acknowledgement of that, I think that becomes a responsibility between the party that has been hurt and God to find a way to release that debt.
Sure.
The biblical idea of forgiveness is to release a debt.
Yeah.
It's a debt that is legitimately owed, but yet you forgive that debt.
Sure.
And so you can't forgive and still want somebody to pay the debt. That's just not how that happens. And so I think those are ways that we move in forgiveness with people who have hurt us and begin to come to terms and grips with our path forward.
Yeah.
And then acknowledge the fact that though somebody did indeed hurt you, you have not always been in the position of being a victim.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have been the perpetrator. And so acknowledgement of that requires some grace on your part to say, um, I know what it's like to be both on both ends of the spectrum. And so those are just a few things that came to mind.
No, that's good. I think with forgiveness, it's a part of it is realizing and being able to admit, hey, I've been affected.
Yeah.
I am damaged. A lot of times people deal with trauma that is unknown to them, or they're unaware of it.
Yeah.
Or, it's a touchy subject. Hey, simple question like, hey, I attend this congregation. We have a really good time. Man, it's a really good community of people. And I'll tell people, hey, if you're not even, because people give the line, especially in this generation that was coming up, I'm not religious, I'm more spiritual. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But do you appreciate community?
Right.
We got a great community of people over here.
Right.
Just come be a part of that. So,
yeah.
But when you invite someone under that guise, there's a subconscious trigger, and I think it starts with awareness of, hey, there's something about a corporate setting, a church setting that really bothers me. And so I think for the individual, even realizing what that is a starting point before you say, hey, realizing what it is or who it is, and then you can, of course, go further.
Yeah. I think most people love and enjoy and want community.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I think that most people, who have been hurt and affected by churches is they love community until they don't. Because, with other communities, they're willing to accept a certain level of, or they even expect a certain level of disappointment or whatever. But it's something about the Bible, and it's something about people who claim to be Christians and love one another or whatever. It's something about that touches a button in the souls of people that says, okay, I can be hurt at work, I can be hurt with family, I can be hurt here, or at the club, or by my baby mama, or by my baby daddy, or whatever. But I will not tolerate being hurt at church. Like that's something different for people that I think is hard for most people to understand.
No, that's good. So that's a good segue. One of the things that when I think about this topic, really just church in general, is the expectation that people have of church, of a religious or spiritual setting. And so I think we have to deal with our expectations for church. Are they realistic?
Yeah.
And I understand the world that we live in, it is full of corruption, some by churches.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand it. So there is that magnitude is there, but now because of where society is going, when you look at the callbacks to just this country that we live in, all this country is built on Christian principles. Well, that's a trigger point for me.
Right.
When you look at the history of this country, or you look at the dollar bill, it says what it say, in God we trust, and it's like, I don't think these are truths that we are that we're telling. And so there are some trigger points. And so I think now when you look at the corporate gathering of believers, there's just so much pressure that is placed on us. And so for us, the question is, do we have, and this is not just for the outsider, but people who are actually in the church. Sometimes you have church members, okay, hey, do we have realistic expectations for the church?
Man, I think it's a great question. I think two things can be true at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so my answer to that is yes and no. I think we've created false paradigms and then get mad when people hold us to it. Mm-hmm. Like, when pastor is, presents himself to be the most holy guy in church and then can't live up to that,
Yeah.
Then we created that paradigm, right?
Yeah, that's true. We gotta take ownership.
We created that when people say stuff like, all the pastor wants is your money, or and we have documented cases where people have misused and abused money.
Yep.
We created that image.
Yeah.
But here's where it's also not true. It's also not true because every pastor ain't trying to sleep with all the women, right?
Correct.
Every pastor
Right.
ain't trying to take all the money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the problem is when we judge all churches by what a few people are doing.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And nobody wants that image in any other arena of life, but yet it is freely demonstrated, with church and religion, right? I was on a flight this past weekend, and I sat next to this pilot who was talking about how he used to work for this former airline, right? And he got this new job with American Airlines because his former airline company went bankrupt. And so I said, well, how did he go bankrupt? And he said, well, he stole $700 million from the airline company. I said, well, how did he steal $700 million from the airline company? He says, well, him and the CFO signed off on some documents. And it turns out that if the CFO signed off on it, then he didn't steal the money. He legitimately gave it, but corporate didn't know about it. The board of directors didn't know about it. And, as I think about it, ain't nobody out here talking about all CEOs are corrupt, right?
That part.
Nobody's out here talking about all pilots are corrupt or all this, and so because we understand that it's absolutely ridiculous to assign negativity to everybody on behalf of what some, few cases of people did, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so my answer to that is to some degree, yeah, we got realistic paradigms. To some degree, no, we don't.
Yeah.
And we can't put everybody in every church in the same boat.
Now that's really good. We got some love. We want to pause for the calls. Got some love coming in from the comment section. Good brother to both of us. Brother Ramon.
What's up, man?
He said something hurt everywhere else, but can't tolerate hurt at the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that is definitely a tweetable moment, is what they call it. But I think now the rave is TikTok. So
yeah,
I think TikTok is it.
It's a TikTokable moment.
Yes, sir. Cousin Carla, I think we don't want to respond to church hurt the way we do other relationships. That's a word. That's a word.
Yeah.
That is so true. And I think because when you look at other relationships, though, it's more intimate, so it's easier to kind of deal with that. Whereas I think sometimes with church, it's widespread.
Yeah. And I also think, again, the Bible messes people up. Like, at the family reunion, very few families are pulling out Bibles to govern our family disputes.
Correct.
Right? Very few families are saying, all right, now everybody sit down. And, the Bible says if you got an alt with your brother, go to him. Very few families are doing that, right?
Correct.
But in church, everything we do is centered around faith and Christianity and the Word of God.
Right.
And so, people expect for you to conform to it, but not me to conform to it, right? And so, anyway, Carla, you need to be up here with us talking about this.
I'm telling
you. You have us all in it.
Yeah. Your as you call, I'm gonna put these up. As you say, your daughter in the gospel. Amber said, great point. Definitely both. and not either or.
Yeah, I saw my daughter in the gospel this past weekend. She certainly made Daddy proud, and we appreciate her work and service in the Lord.
One of the things you look at the church, what's is a realistic expectation is one of the things that we are to provide is sanctuary. And so we talked earlier briefly about, man, how the church in previous eras and generations, it was the epicenter. It was the mecca of the community. And now, I mean, even though you have so many churches around, I mean, the community doesn't even know that church is even present. And so I think for us as churchgoers, as leaders in said congregations, we have to really reevaluate the needs of this generation, because the needs, I believe, of this generation are drastically different from the needs of yesteryear. And so, from your vantage point, how do we provide that sanctuary and meet the needs of this current generation?
You know, just as soon as an expert can do the research and collect the data and produce a book about this culture and what it needs and how a church can be relevant to it, the needs change.
Yeah.
You know, we are in such a fast-paced movement right now. Like, you know, it's just amazing how fast stuff is moving.
Sure.
Here's what I think is unchanging, though. I think what people want is they want real relationships.
Yeah.
You know,
that's been constant.
You know, it's constant, right? You know, I think what people want is they don't want superficial ministry. They want longevity in terms of ministry. I've got a discipleship plan that I've yet to implement and integrate into the lives of people, but I think it could be successful, right? And what it is that the church does not have the capacity to follow up on every contact that it makes from some of our community outreach efforts. We can give out 200 or 300 book bags and this and that and all that kind of stuff, but we don't have the capacity to follow up on all of that.
Right.
What would happen, though, if we shifted our paradigm to adopt 10 families, you know, in our local community and walk with them for 1 year, meeting all of their needs, right? What would happen instead of giving out 100 or 200 or 300 turkeys or whatever? We walk with that one family and from A to Z for 1 year, focus all of our attention on them and bless them for their children for school, bless them for Christmas and Thanksgiving, throughout the course of their life, showed up to their children's football games and practices, showed up to their baseball games and practices, got them in a course that taught them financial literacy, you know, got them in some kind of program that helped them to expand their educational desires and their professional desires. What would happen if a church, instead of reaching out to everybody, just picked a number of people that they could have the capacity to walk with and disciple? How much more impactful would that be than trying to bless a whole lot of people at one time? So, you know, for me, my philosophy is, and who am I? I'm just a nobody, right? But my philosophy is that meeting the needs of this current generation is more about relationships and discipleship and longevity of time, rather than you know touch and go.
That's good. You want to know who's really, when I listen to you describe that concept, who's really good at that, and they've been around for forever. Big brothers and big sisters.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually their philosophy.
Absolutely.
Let's grab someone in the community, grab someone in the school system, and let's latch on to them. Let's see what their current needs are, and let's do what we can to meet that. And
Absolutely.
I think if we adopt that and those principles you just shared, I think that would be really, really beneficial, because I think too, when you talk about this generation, there is a need for a more personal, intimate approach.
Right.
Like you said, versus that touch and go. Think about, okay, passing out turkeys. Every church is doing that.
Yeah.
Feeding the homeless. Every
Yeah.
church, for the most part, is doing that. So what's going to? It's not really about separating, but what's going to really make that impact?
Yeah.
On a more from a longevity standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you fed me, but I can go stand on the corner and get a couple coins and dollars and go to McDonald's.
Yeah. Matter of fact, when we were giving out turkeys this past year for Thanksgiving, several people pulled up with the turkey already in the trunk. Right.
Yeah, because they church hop.
That's right.
They get on social media. They figure, okay, this church is doing back to school fair. Same
That's
thing,
right.
back to school fair.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to figure out what church is doing back to school fair. I'm gonna pick the date.
Facts.
Yeah,
Facts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back when in Texarkana at my last ministry, what they were doing, we would give out school supplies. They would take it to Walmart or wherever and exchange it, like for money, like.
Oh wow!
Like, I said, well, I might as well give you this $5 if you gonna take it. You gonna take this notebook paper back just to get $5.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was crazy, man. It was crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, you realize just how, in our efforts to be relevant, we're really not.
Yeah.
We're really not.
Yeah. I think those things were relevant 15, 20 years ago.
Sure.
But they're not as effective today as they once were.
Yeah. That's good. We got some love in the comment section coming through. Minister Ramon, real relationships, not religious rituals. That's a word. That might be a sermon coming up soon.
Yo, Ramon is the king of
alliteration.
Of alliteration.
Yeah.
He the king of alliteration.
Yes, sir. Let me see. You know how to come in, Amber. We got to be willing to learn beyond our levels of comfortability. There's a vast level of life that our generations are needing practical biblical instruction regarding condemnation free. Did I get all of that? Is there something else that I'm missing, or did I read that wrong?
You got it right.
Okay.
And I just want to say that my daughter has been disrespectful in the comments, and I just want to tell her that I don't appreciate it talking about yuck. After all I've done for you, I raised you up in the gospel, and here you are. That's all right. That's all right. I'm gonna take you out my will.
Yeah, you a fool, man. You a fool. No, but I mean, it's true. There has to be a more intimate and a more tailored approach. We have to. This thing, like I think, also what has really hurt the church, as far as our ability to impact, is we have been groomed to believe that this one cookie cutter approach is going to work for everybody. That's one. Two, we've been groomed to believe that we have to have all the answers, or our faith is completely evolved, or we've arrived. There's nothing else that we need to fix, or what we have is obsolete.
Yeah.
And that's not the case.
No, faith is evolving. Faith is and it should be evolving, right? If you still believe the same thing about everything today that you did 10 years ago or 5 years ago,
Sure.
then you need to do some soul searching, right?
Correct.
You need to do some studying.
Correct.
Because faith is evolving. And the demonstrations of our faith, the outgrowth of our faith with our hands is evolving.
Sure.
Our feet moves in different directions when our faith evolves. And so sometimes you can grow beyond other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes other people can grow beyond you.
That's right.
and that presents a significant mismatch. You know, when we have some of these conversations.
No, that's good. And one thing to point out that I've learned really over the last couple of years, there's this belief that, okay, on the topic of church hurt, right? Sometimes it's not always that you're hurt. It's just, you know what, this church is no longer able to meet your needs. And so it's understanding, okay, hey, maybe it's time to look at another congregation. I have a firm belief, hey, go where you can grow. Go where you can grow.
Yeah.
If it's here at Burger Street, cool. If it's at Peoria, cool. If it's at North Sheridan, another congregation elsewhere, that's fine. Go where you can grow. That's one. But the other side of it is, it rarely happens, but it does happen sometimes, where it's not the individual that evolves from the church, but sometimes the church is evolving faster than the individual.
Yes.
And so you have it to where now the church is growing at a rapid pace, not just numerically, but doctrinally and spiritually.
Right.
Church is growing, but then you have this one person that they're trying to hold on to tradition.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about doctrine, but hold on to traditional beliefs that no longer fit the revelation of the Spirit through the Word of God.
Right. Yeah, man. I think it happens on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Where somebody or something outgrows you. And change is hard for people.
Sure.
It's hard for people, and it's hard for institutions. It's hard to shift what you've always done. It's hard for people to see why you need to shift. It's hard for people to believe that if I change, that this next step, that there's going to be firm footing for me.
Sure.
Right? Organizational and systemic leadership requires that every leader and every organism acknowledges that people within the system struggle to change, but also acknowledge that the structure itself needs to change. And the churches largely have been doing the same thing for many, many years. But I think there are also legitimate questions that religious leaders have to answer. And those questions are related to, if we change, what do we become? Right? And is God okay with what we become? There are some things that are happening right now in religion that I'm not okay with. You know,
we talked about some of them before. Yeah.
Like, I'm not okay with some stuff, right? You know, and I think it is a worthy question to ask about whether God is okay with it. You know, and I dare not get into it. I don't want y'all in my inbox, but you know, I do think that you're right. You're right. And if I do, you might not like it.
Okay.
But how should you do that? I can't do it. But so we definitely need change. But what change, and for what reason are we changing? And how do we bring people along to accept a new vision?
Yeah, we say a lot, we preach and it's taught, hey, I'm not going to change the message, but the method needs to change. Churches, people say that, but they don't change the method. They just, It's okay.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt some people. It's like almost like politics, church politics, okay?
Right.
Election time, we're going to tell you what we need you to hear to get your vote, and we ain't changing the thing.
Yeah.
And churches have been doing the same thing. Rinse, repeat.
That's right. Appealing to their base.
Yeah.
You know, and because it's about, if I lose my base, then I lose my support. I lose my money. I lose my da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So you got to appeal to your base.
Yeah.
So I get it, right? I get it, because your base keeps the system going.
Sure.
So I get it. But one of the things I did when I was in Texarkana is I sat down with my older people And I said, how many children or grandchildren do you have that live here in town? And, oh, baby, I got 5 sons and 16 grandchildren. Well, where are they?
There you go.
Right? And what are you willing to compromise on to have your children and grandchildren in church? You know, what are you willing to do to allow me to reach out to them? Because they ain't coming to church like this.
Nah.
You know, something has to change.
And it's methodology.
Yeah.
Is what it gets down to. The current method that is presented is not effective for this era of time. And that goes to like, we're not talking doctrine. We're talking about how the doctrine is presented.
Yeah.
We're talking the aesthetic of the church building, how things look. This matters to young people. We've all, for those of us who are older than David and myself, you've all been young, and you've been in that state where you really cared about how things look. But also, that's not a superficial thing. That's biblical.
Yeah.
God cared about and still cares about how the edifice, how the temple, how the synagogue, how things looked. He was very detailed.
Yeah.
And so the aesthetic, the method of presentation, you mentioned earlier about just how methods and techniques, things are ever evolving. Technology. If you look at the presentation of just this podcast, this is drastically different from season 1 because I had to, okay, what's popping now? What's attractive now? And so you have to evolve to stay adapt to the times. And so it's important the church has to really reconsider our presentation.
Yeah, church has to reconsider our presentation. I believe there's a tremendous biblical concept associated with that. Mm-hmm. It's called stewardship, right? You know,
right.
God wants to know, how do you represent him?
Sure.
You know, and the most simple biblical analogy I can think of is we are the body of Christ. Mm-hmm. If Christ is the head and we are the body, made up of many members, then how God's body presents itself to the world matters. Mm-hmm. We're the hands and the feet of Jesus. We do the work of God on earth.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think there's a tremendous biblical principle tied to it.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. We really appreciate those who've been rocking with us at any point in this episode. One, because I know how to read a room, even if the room is virtual. I'm aware that at present, regardless of your time zone, this episode right now is rivaling the NBA Finals right now. So I know some people are watching the finals right now. So for those who are rocking with us, or you may be doing both. You may got your TV on and got your phone on this. So we appreciate those of us who are rocking with us. And we appreciate you, Dave, taking time away from your family as well. I don't know if you're a basketball man or not, but we appreciate you.
Not really, though I am a hooper like Allen Iverson.
Okay.
I can, you know.
Amber's back in. What you got, Amber? She says, I'm learning that some believe relatability to mean worldly. Not the same. That's a really, really good point. The way you package the truth should always be upgraded, just like anything else effective. Case in point. Let me do this real quick. So we got technology, right? iPhone. It has, let me turn my phone away because I want y'all seeing what's on my phone. This phone has evolved from the iPhone, was it the 3G?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the iPhone 3G to now, well, this is a 14, but you get the concept, right?
He got that big money, that 14.
No, payment plan, baby. I ain't buying none now, right? I got to deal with Verizon, baby. But yeah, technology, it evolves, and the church should evolve as well. But that's a really, really good point. We ought to package the truth in such a way that it is attractive. It should evolve. I mean, you look at even cars. Now with cars, they've got a good philosophy where they keep the same body style for about
Hmm.
4 or 5 years, and then
Hmm.
they may have the ability to do it all, but they slowly but surely, you
That's right.
know, make different iterations and changes and
Sure.
whatnot. So yeah, that's a
Sure.
very very good point, Sister Amber. We appreciate you, man. Lastly, as we shut this thing down, season 2, man, we appreciate you again, bro, for just being with us. What are some final thoughts and words of encouragement that you want to offer, bro?
Um, Final thoughts is that God is doing a new thing in this season. And you've always got to be discerning of who God is doing a new thing through. Um, and ironically, the new thing that God is doing is much like the old thing that God has always done, which is that God has always picked the underdog
Hmm.
to work miracles through.
Sure.
He's always picked the underdog, the less talented, the less gifted, the less experienced, the less this to speak to his people. And it was through the power and the work of God that many great things came through folks who were not capable or qualified of their own power. And so, what am I saying? What I'm saying is that God is even now doing a new thing by way of an old means, in that He is working through the less talented, the less qualified, the less whatever. Your resume doesn't appear like you should be where you are, but God has a way of raising up the people who don't want it as bad,
Hmm.
the people who aren't equipped as effectively
Hmm.
to do great and wonderful things. You asked me earlier about this generation, right? And what does this generation look like in regard to church, and how can we reach it?
Yeah.
Well, what I believe is that God is doing a new thing even through this generation,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I believe that God is tearing down strongholds, and I believe that God is removing boundaries and barriers. I believe that God is raising up a generation of people with a love for God that isn't tied to politics of church. He's raising up a generation with a love for God that simply wants to please Him. I believe that He's raising up a generation with a love for God that wants to see and do things differently. And there is a curiosity that God is brewing in the bellies of young people that does not look like we have seen it before.
Sure.
And so, if I could just land on this, I would say to the professional Christians, right? The lifelong Christians, the folks who grew up in church, and the folks who know all of the right church words, and know how to inflect your voice at the right time, and know how to pray the right way. I would say to you that either you've got two choices. Either you can get on the same team as God or get out of his way.
Hmm.
Because what's about to happen is that God, as he raises up these young people, they're going to begin to take over spaces that we never thought they would take over. And we're going to see, and we're seeing it now, really, if you're paying attention, we're going to see these young people do something for God that is so amazing, and it's
Hmm.
going to be a renaissance of faith and Christianity, but it ain't going to look like how we thought it was
Oh
going to
no.
look, right? And so when they start to come in our churches with their hats on and with their tattoos and with, a little bit of sag in their pants, that does not mean that they don't love God.
Mm-hmm.
That just simply means that they have a different way of expressing their faith.
Culture's changing.
And so my heart's desire is that the church would get to a place where it would embrace faith and Christianity even though it does not look like how we grew up.
That's good. Excellent. Excellent. We did have another come in during your spiel. Let's get him out. That came from Ramon. He made a good point. He said, if we don't evolve, we will dissolve.
Mm.
He said, this has been an excellent program. It has helped me rethink some things with ministry. Bless you both for being a blessing. Yes, sir. We, we definitely appreciate you, bro. I think I can confidently speak for both of us. Neither David or myself would be where we are without you, bro.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
You poured into our lives immensely during the messed up days. Didn't have nothing.
Absolutely.
And you definitely took care of us, bro. So we definitely appreciate.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that.
I appreciate it. I could tell some stories, but I ain't.
Again, bro, we appreciate you, man.
Man, appreciate
Yes,
you
sir.
having me. I enjoy it every time.
Yeah, man. You definitely blessed us, man. It's definitely been a blessing for sure. And so we definitely appreciate you. There you go. I was like, where my music at, man?
Yeah.
Now, season 2, again, this is the finale. We pray that this comeback episode has been a blessing. We pray this comeback season has been a blessing. I said in episode number 1, this kind of production, this kind of content is hard. So give me a couple months and we'll be back with you for season number 3. But again, we pray if you haven't caught all the episodes, we'll definitely have that playlist together and we'll get it out to you. Man, those who've been rocking with us, those who may come on Team Replay when game 1 of the NBA Finals is done, we look forward to having you on. But until the next episode, we'll see you then. God bless you. God keep you. Peace.
Peace.